Dude Will. The Story of People podcast returns this week with an old friend who's back to update me on a whole bunch of things from the last show that I did, where a whole bunch of things were going on. And now she's equally as busy, if not busier than she was then. Renee Paquette, welcome back.
Hi.
The Story of People podcast. Now the Story of People podcast. Before it was something else, but it's this now. How you
This
doing?
is a really cool setup that you have. This is really neat.
I dig well, I just like telling stories of people and keep it nice and
Yeah,
simple and nice and tight.
me too. I
You're
love
the
that.
you're the how do I say, you're the broadcast expert, so you understand the plight of trying to do post work.
Of course. I mean, let's just, shoot it live to tape, right?
Yeah. So
Save a little
I
work. That's great. Looks awesome.
try to keep it a little run it a little lean. So
Yeah,
there
I
you go.
dig it. I dig it. Very cool.
Anyways, it's been a while since we've chatted, but you've had a lot going on, man. The book and the baby and things and your shows, and there's so much to do. So I want to we'll just go right to it because there's a few things to cover today. So Renee Paquette, for the people watching and listening at home, what do you do?
Well, things that I do. I hope that you have a checklist in front of you because sometimes I forget things because I constantly am just adding things onto my plate. But current things that I am doing, I am a broadcaster, television personality for All Elite Wrestling on TBS, TNT. It's great. I've been with them almost coming up on a year. I believe that it was October 17th of last year when I got to make my debut with AEW. We did a huge show in Toronto. So, of course, it was really special for me to be able to debut in Toronto in front of my friends, my family, that hometown crowd. So that was really cool. So I've been doing that the last year while also tacking on. They just got their first W of the season, but the Cincinnati Bengals, I do a podcast with them called Renee All Dey so that's been really fun to be able to dive into their world. I've obviously spent such a bulk of my career dabbling with wrestlers, so it's really cool to kind of be in there, hang with these dudes. My big takeaway is just how kind and sweet they all are, which I don't know if that's like a boring thing or not, but I feel like you think of this like very winning team and these like badass dudes, and they're all just like such cool, sweet guys. So that has been a blast. I am a mother of a almost 2.5-year-old. She's keeping me on my toes. I've got my cookbook, Messy in the Kitchen. So I've been, constantly trying to knock out more content, more cooking content. I was trying to dabble in editing some of my own videos online, which I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, just staying busy with whatever else life kind of throws at me.
I thought you'd have a team now for all that stuff, given how
Well,
busy you are.
I do. But some things kind of fell between the cracks this past weekend. And I was like, you know what? Let me just have a crack at it myself because I feel like I should be able to edit more efficiently on Instagram or a CapCut or something like that. So I was kind of messing around with it. That's my one of my big regrets in my career is that I never learned how to edit. I never had to do that. When I started in this business, it was a little less of the DIY. I started DIY, but not the way people are now on social media, being able to cut stuff together and put together stuff that looks really, really slick. That was not what I came from. So that's one thing that I always kind of regret a little bit is that I wish that I knew how to do more of that stuff to be a little bit more self-sufficient. Because you do need a team. I'm a dumbass.
They
I'm
make
an
it so
elder
easy
millennial.
now.
I know.
They make it so easy now. Well, I mean, if I can figure out minor bits of micro, anyone can. So that's the bit about. I think the thing that takes the most about these things, I would imagine. So last time we chatted, you were just announcing that you had launched the sessions, and it was kind of funny because it was a new, not that you're not used to speaking to people or anything, but it was a new space and going into podcast space. And then it became this giant show, which was amazing. But my thought in my brain at that time was like, well, I hope she has a team because you're going to get such great
team for that. I had a team for that.
You're going to get such great content out of that. That I was like, oh, I hope you have a really good team that's going to put this stuff together.
that was a big thing for me. I mean, when I first started doing the podcast, I started working with the volume. I mean, just a handful of episodes into me launching the podcast. So I did have a team when I first started. I brought on Emilio Sparks, who's great in the podcast space. He's especially great in like the wrestling podcast space. So I brought him on right from the jump, and then we ended up moving over to the volume, and then they set us up with an even bigger team. So that made my life easier, because the part that I like about all of this is the click, red lights on, let's hang and do the chat. I like doing that. It's all the other stuff that comes with it that's a little bit like draining. The post, the Instagram post, putting it on Twitter, put it here, put it on YouTube, doing all those things. So yeah, being able to sort of delegate those duties around a little bit really helps me. Because geez, honestly, being on my phone, I hate being on my phone so much. And especially having a toddler, I hate if I feel like I'm like, I'm trying to put together a post, I'm trying to put together the caption. That stuff started to drive me crazy. So yeah, I definitely started to delegate that stuff out.
It's so crazy, because I had a talk with a gentleman that's sort of like, I just learned this week that there's a podcast Hall of Fame, but regardless, it's a whole thing where that genre has just exploded to and there's some groundbreaking people that were a part of that, and they really set the tone. But it's taken so many forms and so many life forms that it's funny. And I was talking about video content and micro content and all the rest of it, and he said, yeah, but you got to have the conversation first.
Yes.
So the core of it is the conversation. It doesn't matter how fancy everything looks. If people aren't interested in listening, then they're going to tune out.
Especially when there's like, the joke is always, blah, blah, blah has a podcast, and this person has a podcast, and now this person has a podcast. It's like, it can become such white noise. And it's so funny because like I think you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth, in that I love podcasts that are just conversations, either amongst friends or people that come from similar walks of life or whatever. Like, I love listening to Dak Shepard's podcast, and he's just shooting the shit with a guest. I mean, a celebrity, usually pretty notable celebrities. But I love when they kind of go off the beaten path, and they talk about different interests and things that aren't necessarily happening on set or in like their work lives. And that's so kind of whatever. But when you have the great chemistry amongst people and somebody that can really kind of lead a show like that, those are the most effective to me. Even like, David Letterman doing Please Welcome My Next Guest, or my next guest at this time, that he's doing on Netflix. It's like, it is a bare bones show when he's on the stage, 2 chairs set up. And he's just such a great, compelling interviewer that it makes that show so great. I mean, obviously the extra stuff of him, walking through a CVS or something with Kim Kardashian's great. But I love just sort of basic shows. I love that. I don't need the bells and the whistles and like a weird hook, or now we're going to play this game, or we're going to do whatever. Like, those are fine, but I like to just have a good conversation with somebody.
That, like, I showed that picture. But if you just sitting, I mean, you prefer that setup. I mean, the sessions was even more from home. You built a studio and all. So do you prefer that long form?
I do love the long form. I love doing that. I mean, when you look at that setup with the Bengals, I wish that I could have done something like that with the sessions all the time. Sure. We got to do a handful of interviews like that out of the Blue Wire studios out in Las Vegas when we were out there before. And there's just something more tangible about being in person with somebody, and you don't have a slight lag if your internet feeds, whatever. Like, you can just get on the same page and gel so much quicker with somebody. This is great. This is what kind of came from the COVID years of us all just trying to stay afloat and stay entertained and stay connected and all those great things. And I'm so happy that this is an option. But yeah, if I could just go do it in person with somebody, I would much prefer that.
Oh, they just the content that comes out of those one-on-ones are amazing. 3-camera, 4-camera shoot. Everyone's so relaxed.
Yes. It's
but
really
I travel
nice.
for work, and you travel for work. It's
Who
impossible.
Has the time?
Who has the time? I've got a little tiny studio I bring with me, and I even brought it with me this summer, and I'm like, I can't. I got to take the whole summer off. I can't do it. So, we're in the do section, and so man, there's lots of things that you're doing. all right, I want to come back to the Bengals in a
Okay.
second, but let's go back to a year ago. You joined AEW. I'm going to keep the wrestling talk to a minimum because there's a whole bunch of people that will
I
pick up on
froth at the
all
mouth
sorts of
for
things.
it.
But you go from the biggest wrestling company in the world. You go to this new wrestling company in the world that I guess we can legitimately say is number 2,
Mhm.
and you're familiar with the space. Obviously, you're married to a wonderful man that's leading the charge over there and on the ground floor of making it what it is.
Yeah.
And so there's been these hits. There's been the all these great moments so far in the company's history that have happened. The Grand Slam, the first Grand Slam, all these just tiny little things that where
Yeah.
people are like, whoa,
Yeah.
and then you go from you're used to the WrestleManias. You come in as used to WrestleMania, the 80,000 and the giant amount of people that are attending those events, and then AEW goes and does this at Wembley.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, with you coming in a year in to the company, I mean, how do you feel about that? About that moment for the people that are there now, the people that helped built it. It must have been an
Mhm.
overwhelming
Oh
feeling.
my gosh, it really was. And like just to see all of the hard work that everybody's putting in, whether it's, guys and girls having matches and getting their really extravagant, beautiful gear made to like entrances like Soraya coming out to We Will Rock You and coming out with her whole family. But for me to be kind of perched up top is where our studio was set up to do the pre-show, to do the, kind of get everyone hyped for the show. We had the buy-in, to be able to do that and have that whole view of the stadium as it's filling up. And like you said, yes, I have been familiar with moments like that. I've been to, many WrestleManias. I got to call WrestleMania. I've got to do, kickoff shows for WrestleMania. But to be a part of something like this, it just had that like ground roots feel to be like, holy shit, like look at what we did. It's just so impressive. And, there's also just something so special about UK wrestling fans. They are just like rabid fans.
I know.
They want to be at everything. They are loud. They're rowdy. They're so fun to perform for. And for the people that had never been over to the UK to wrestle like that before,
Yeah.
it was just like such a fun experience. But it just felt so big. It felt like, a flag being cemented into the top of a mountain. It felt really important for the wrestling business, not just AEW.
And I think
for everybody.
wrestlers from all organizations acknowledge that, which I thought was wonderful. Which is the first time we've always had the breaking of the kayfabe, and we've always had all these sort of moments of like crossover. I understand, but it's rare that at least it's just awesome now to see everybody else acknowledging everybody else.
Yeah, there really is just such like a camaraderie amongst all of the locker rooms, and everyone puts in that certain amount of work of that like blood, sweat, tears. If you're in the wrestling business, you're in it because you love it. So I think that we all very much so root for each other to succeed. And when one person succeeds, it's good for everybody. When All Elite Wrestling succeeds, it's great for everybody. If an individual is succeeding, it's great for everybody. So, it is really cool to be able to see that support on both sides of the fence.
So then who's the bigger wrestling fan in the house?
Oh, John, of course.
I mean, your show was so informative, and I mean, saying you as a wrestling fan, he's a wrestler.
Yeah.
But
John's like like the ultimate like student though. He is always learning. He's a student and a teacher. And that's really a cool thing for me to be married to a man that is, really the backbone, I think, of what professional wrestling is today. I mean, I always just look back at his body of work and, currently is his body of work. And I'm just always so impressed with his way to, it's not even just like reinventing himself, but it's the way he can kind of like shift into different versions of himself and really just shine in those moments. But anyways, that aside, to be around him and watch the way that he enjoys wrestling and the way that he watches wrestling, that gives me a perspective that I might not know. I came up in the WWE world. I know WWE. I know it, especially from the time that I was there. But
Sure.
John is so he knows everything. Especially like Japanese style from like the ECW days to WCW to like all the different promotions and all that. So I'm very lucky that just like kind of through osmosis and spending time around him that I've been able to kind of absorb a little bit of the knowledge that he has, as I just kind of keep my ears open and hear the things that he talks about and the things that make him passionate. It's cool to be able to hear that.
I think that's great with and you've had the benefit of like some super information on both sides because I know your dad really well, and obviously we've talked concerts before,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of that history of coming through the music industry and stuff too that you got. So you've had a good run of like
I've been pretty
solid information.
lucky.
Yeah,
I've been pretty lucky to be like I kind of plop into certain environments and I just get to be a sponge
yeah. It's
and
amazing.
learn. And that's really the best way to do it. It's, honest. And of course, I'm lucky and fortunate to be in those situations, especially with my dad. So being plopped into something or being brought up in something in the pro wrestling world, that wasn't something that I necessarily saw coming on like my own little personal roadmap. But then to end up being able to do all the things that I have been able to do in my career in the pro wrestling space, especially, I've just been able to like learn and adapt and kind of figure things out on the fly, which is great. And what I was going to say though is when every time people ask me for like advice on how to like get into it, I'm like, it's just like being in it and learning it.
Yeah.
And it's not something you're going to learn really from going to school, I don't think. Sorry, broadcasting school.
Yeah. No, you're not alone on that one, unfortunately.
Sorry.
Okay, so I want to stick on Do for a couple more minutes here because you made a tweet. Obviously, you've got a brand new show.
Yeah.
So you're doing this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Renee All Dey coming soon. And you talked about how you weren't sure, you got into the wrestling world and you didn't see that coming. Did you see yourself hosting a show for the Cincinnati Bengals and
No.
now you're in football, Renee?
Now
So
I'm in football.
let's go that way. Did you see that happening?
I didn't. And it's funny because I guess sort of in like that same breath, I became an American citizen 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago, 3 years, maybe 3 years ago, coming up on 3 years ago. So it's been a little minute, but with that, I feel like there's like that big thread of Americana that I do think pro wrestling is very Americana, but NFL is especially Americana.
Sure.
So that was, for me, I've always been like, I don't have my football team. Who's my football team? I got to like sink my teeth into something. And when we lived in Las Vegas, the Raiders were coming in. I'm like, am I going to be a Raiders fan? And then we moved to Cincinnati, and lo and behold, they just go and have these like stellar back-to-back seasons, and are just building this like dynasty team. It's so cool to watch. They're amazing. So yeah, I would not have seen that coming, but moving to Cincinnati and kind of jumping on that bandwagon, I was like, oh my God, we got here and the team is winning and, they're, champions and moving on to the Super Bowl, like all of these amazing things that they were able to do. So it made it very easy for me to kind of get on that bandwagon and like be like very loudly rooting for them on like my social media and kind of making the connection that way. So yeah, when the opportunity came through that they wanted to expand what some of their content was, it just made perfect sense for me to jump in there and go and hang with some of the players and get a little behind the curtain peek at who these guys are, who they are under the helmet, behind the jersey. So yeah, it's just been really fun. This is not an X's and O's kind of show where I think all of a sudden I know everything about football. It's certainly not the case, but I know people and I know personalities, and I love being able to pull that out of those guys.
Very random again.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's the way it goes. I feel like
very random.
I just feel like my career has been kind of random in a way like that I kind of go where I don't know. It's like I just kind of get led in these certain directions, and I just go for it, and it's fun.
Well, talent wins. I'm always a fan of that. It rises. They say talent rises to the top, but I think that anyone that's consistently persistent in what they're trying to achieve, or they're going after certain things, or they stay in that zone.
It's a combination of both of those things. Yeah, it's what do they say that is it preparation and time or something like that? Some kind of saying of that.
We'll find it. I'll find it.
Look it up. Google it.
I'll find it on a thing. Moving on. We're going to move on to the did section. So basically, we know about your history before getting into, say, WWE, but just through all the journey that you had, because you were on the show before and people are going to have to listen to that episode to find out about that journey. I encourage you. It's a wonderful episode. But now we're in a new space. How did you do it? How did the All Elite come together? How did the Bengals thing come together? And how did you, how have you moved on since the release of the cookbook? There's just a few things that have all kind of happened, including the launch of your podcast since we've chatted last. So
yeah, it's been a lot. Yeah. So I guess how did I do it? I guess I'll start with AEW first. I mean, that's the bulk of the main thing that I'm doing right now. But so when I left WWE in 2020, is that when I left? Sounds about right. 2019? Maybe it's 2019.
Sure. You'd know.
So do I don't know anything. Life, honestly, I feel like everyone the last couple of years have been such a blur. Beginning of COVID is really when I left WWE. Knew that the ride was slowing down. It was time for me to jump off. I had done everything there. I had such a great career. I was very lucky, I guess, to be able to do all the things that I was able to do there. But I did it all, and I really wasn't sure what my next move was, but it felt like it was time for me to part ways and go figure out what that was. And then in that time, I got pregnant. I had a baby. I released a cookbook, and the whole world was shut down. So that just kind of, it pushed things forward, but also kind of kept things at a little, like no one really knew what was going on. So that's when I launched my podcast, The Sessions, because I just figured that was the right thing to kind of get into doing. I could do it from home. I could kind of hang out. I have my daughter. I was trying to figure out how to stay creative while figuring out motherhood, figuring out this new version of who I am. So I did that for a while, and it was great. I loved being able to do that, but it wasn't like fully scratching the itch. I'm a TV person. I love doing TV. And I was not ready to be away from doing that, I'm not hanging it up. I had a baby. Sure. I can come back, So I was trying to like find that footing again. But anyway, so more John and I kind of kept talking about it. It just made the most sense for me to come join AEW. Some of the stuff that we had rattled off, it's like they're such a young company, but they're growing exponentially. New shows being added, new content being done. There's just so many different things now. We're doing like monthly pay-per-views. There's just so much stuff to be doing. And I felt like it was a great spot for me to be able to jump in there as a broadcaster and kind of lend my expertise that I've been able to gain over the last decade and now be able to apply it here. So that all it came together really quick of sort of like the light bulb going off. And Nora was just a year and a couple months. She was just over a year old when I decided to kind of go back. I was like, okay, we made it to the year mark. Now what? Now where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Once we had that conversation and talked to Tony, and I mean, the contract came through really quickly, and it was literally about this time last year that it all happened. And then we just were waiting until that Toronto show for me to be able to make my debut with them. It was cool.
And have a really great promo with Christian. It just cracked me up. It was just like,
it was cool that I got to do it with him.
It
was really special that I got to have that first moment with him. So that's really how that all kind of came together with AEW, and then just kind of forging on, sort of figuring out more of like, what am I going to do there? What other shows can we help doing? Is there some shoulder programming maybe that we could do for AEW? Is there other kind of interview style shows I can do there? There's, it's the whole thing's kind of busted wide open. There's so many different options of things that I could do there. So that's been really fun to navigate all of that in the last almost year. And then with the Bengals, again, kind of sitting at home, and I was, when I first started doing Renee All Day, I was still doing the sessions. So I was a bit of a lunatic to go, let's add another show onto my plate. But, popping down there, the stadiums, around the corner from my house, it was easy to be able to go down there and hang with these guys and kind of do some content with them. And then this season, we knocked out a few more in a bulk shoot. We're going to do some more again, I guess, around the halfway part of the season. but yeah, it's just been cool. It's it's really just making those connections and landing back in it. Being in a new city. I'm not familiar with Cincinnati when we first moved here, so I was trying to figure out what can I do that's around here, what's available. And obviously having Cincinnati Bengals be here and being able to do something with them, it's just been a really, really cool moment.
I can relate. When moving to Vancouver, I was a Leaf fan, and it's like, well, what am I going to do? Not watch hockey?
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
So you gotta do what you have to do.
And I was like that in Las Vegas too. It's like I moved down there and people like, I can't let you jump ship from the Maple Leafs. And I was like, listen, man, I was living in Las Vegas and I needed a little bit of Canada. We got a hockey team and like a good hockey team. So It was a pretty easy decision actually.
Let's see it now, Renee.
Yes.
The clip from this is Renee hates, all these hockey teams, but it's interesting because like your plate to me, it always seems relatively full. Obviously you can manage what you can manage, and being a mommy comes first, and all the rest that goes with that. But is your plate full? Is there always room for more in your case? Because, I'm sure your hamster's running all the time. So you're probably looking for new ideas and new things all the time.
Yeah, I will always make space on my plate if the project is right. And I think that's really where I'm at right now. I feel like I've been busy. My time in WWE kept me very busy just because that schedule is very busy. And, they had me hosting a million different things, from network shows to even certain live event things, to all of the different events that WWE puts on. So that just kept me busy as it was. And then trying to figure out staying busy and staying in that rhythm was just kind of adding more things onto my plate. And then I kind of hit the point that I was like, okay, I need to actually clear something off my plate right now, which is what essentially happened with the sessions. I love doing that show, but it was really, really time consuming. And having a young daughter at home, I just felt like I was like, I'm working too hard. And I just want to be able to enjoy this time, because any parent knows this time goes by so fast, and I'm lucky enough that I can just kind of slow down. I say slow down, but I'm still on the road traveling with a wrestling company and doing these other shows. So it's not really slowing down, but it's picking and choosing what things get my attention right now. So yes, if the right thing came along, if say Good Morning America called or Kelly Ripa needed me to fill in, of course, that's something that I'd be like, okay, how do we make this work? Sure. But in terms of being at a point of wanting to throw stuff against a wall and try to just create something right now, I don't have the mental capacity for that right now. I think I'm a little spent. I feel like my bandwidth has been kind of utilized. I need to take a little breather. It's funny. I keep kind of coming across this same sort of meme thing on Instagram saying sometimes creatives just need to have time to sit around to do nothing. I'm at that point right now. I think I need to have a second to just figure out, let me do nothing for a minute, or I'm not doing nothing, but take a second. I don't need to add on a bunch more things to just be doing busy work. I'd rather sit back and have a moment to be creative. I feel like I've been a little bit creatively tapped in the last little while of doing so many different things. It's nice to just sort of go, okay, how can I just take a beat, but also just be present when I'm with my daughter. I don't want to be thinking about doing a million different things and trying to prep for an interview while I'm also cooking dinner and trying to get her into bed. It's it's just too much happening right now. I just want to press pause, hang with her, and when the right thing comes up and I feel like I've kind of been able to cleanse my palate a little bit, I will go do that other thing.
Well, and we all need it, in life. Just in
totally.
life, I was not feeling creative whatsoever, and I was like, I just got to take the summer off.
Yeah.
And you get the rule, when you have a show like this, an indie show like this, when it's just me and I got to fight for listens.
Yeah.
You don't want to take
a lot of work,
any time off, because you're like, well, you were on a momentum, and now you're, I'm sure even when you're building the sessions, at least you would have came out with your name and all these amazing interviews that you had, which would put you into a space, but then people would expect you on Mondays, or they expect you on Thursdays, or wherever it's going to be. So you have to take that time for yourself and for your family and
Yeah.
all. What prepped you? Then we'll get on to the will, but what prepped you to manage all of this? And are you find you're more organized after becoming a mom,
No,
or
God,
less
no.
organized? Like sort of what prepped you to be able to balance all of this stuff?
I think both of my parents, I mean, my dad's very organized.
Yeah,
My dad's very organized. He's got really great work ethic. He is constantly going in that space. But my mom as well is like, my mom is a busy woman. She is always just funny. She'll come to visit and it's like she burns me out sometimes. She's like, well, I'm gonna clean the floors and let's go do this. Let me clean out your fridge. Let me do all your laundry. Should I change all your bed sheets? I'm like, oh my gosh, mom. She just has that like busy body mentality, and I've
sure.
certainly inherited that. So I think that's what kind of keeps me going, which is great. I'm so happy that I inherited that. But sometimes it's nice to just go, can we just relax for a minute? But yeah, I think both of my parents very much so. They kind of prep me for that, but I also just have, I think, this big push to be successful, and I don't really know exactly what that means or what I need to achieve to feel that way. But it's, for me, it's just like that kind of push to keep wanting to achieve different things. And I love what I get to do for a living. So I also just don't take that for granted, that like I'm so lucky that I get to do what I do, and that I'm
Yeah.
really lucky that I can be in a position that I go, I'm going to take a minute to go figure out the creative stuff again a little bit. Like I understand how fortunate I am to be able to do that.
That's it's a good balance once you figure it out. Once you're like, this works for me, this doesn't work,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the being able to recharge makes you more creative as
Yes,
people
the
understand.
recharge is crucial, and
Yeah.
it's really hard when you're kind of burning the candle at both ends. And let me tell you that I'm saying these things, but it's not easy for me to do that.
Mhm.
I think actually me saying it out loud is like a reminder to myself again of like, can we just, yes, do the relax thing? Because I'll do it for like a day or two, or do over the weekend. I'm like, okay, what are we doing? Who do I need
I'm
to
the
call? What
same.
meeting do we need to have? And it's like, just chill out for a
I'm
minute.
the same. I'll come off the road and I'm like, I
Yeah.
need some time, and then it's like, all right, time to
Yeah.
do more
I know.
things.
I
Let's
know.
add a ton of stuff.
I
Are you
know.
getting to
It drives my
concerts? Are you
husband
getting
nuts.
a chance to get out and see some music,
No,
or unwinding in that regard
no,
at all, or no?
I have not. I have not. But here's the thing: I'm always looking, because I'll always, obviously, when so and so's on tour, blah 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 is happening. I'm always looking. You
Yeah,
don't get a ton of it here in
you
Cincinnati. It
don't.
all goes to Columbus or Cleveland, and
Yeah.
obviously Nashville. So that's a little bit rough in terms of like, if they were here, I'd be far more inclined to pop out to do it. I will say, I'm pissed I missed this. I thought that I put it in my phone with the notification, but the National, who I didn't even
Oh,
know was from Cincinnati,
how about that?
they came here, but Patti Smith was opening for them. So I was like, I was a little pissed that I missed being able to see Patti Smith in the flesh. That would have been really iconic.
You're not on the list for what's going on in town?
No, I'm just never home.
Yeah, you
It's
got
not
it.
that I'm never home. It's just like, honestly, when we're home, by the time Nora goes to bed and like
Yeah,
I've made dinner, I've done all these things, I'm like, I kind of do just, I've also been able to do that so much in my life. I've gone to so many
of
shows,
course.
I've been to so many concerts, and I love that. And like, there's nothing like that live music experience. And that is a great way to sort of recharge
Mhm.
creatively. It really gets me buzzing again, but I've not been able to do that in a while. But yeah, now it's like, God, by the end of the day, it's like, can we just find a new show to watch and let's like binge something and just like hang out on the couch? Like I love doing that too.
Oh, it's the best. But
It
then we
is the
go, oh, but
best.
there's, yeah. I mean, I'm
I know.
I'm on the Vancouver side, so I got mountains and
Oh,
oceans. So
you've
I have
you've got
yeah, I
everything
have
up
the ability
there.
to get out and do some paddleboarding and hanging out.
Yeah, Vancouver really is heaven on earth. Don't tell
Uh,
everyone from Toronto I just said that, but it's true.
well, hey, listen, I'm from Toronto too, right? I'm
Yeah.
even done with it, going to Oshawa, Port Perry. Let's
Mhm.
just even go to there.
Yep.
But
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, there's a mountain and an ocean It
I will
speaks to me.
always
So
remember
it
the
speaks to me.
first time I got off a plane in Vancouver and I was like, wait, this has been here my whole life. And like, I could have been out here. It's beautiful. Vancouver really is such a special
Expensive
place.
as hell, but it's
Oh
beautiful.
my God. All of Canada is expensive as hell. My mom told me yesterday, I was on the phone with her. She had just moved out to Nova Scotia. She went to go grocery shopping. A bottle of HP sauce was $9. What are we doing? What is happening?
That's a whole thing. That's a whole other podcast.
Oh my! It's a whole other podcast. I don't mean to steer.
Do you have an over-under on?
But it's crazy.
Do you have an over-under when she's going to pick up the Maritime?
Oh, it won't take her long. My grandparents are from there. She'll be in a second.
No problem. Right down there. She'll be in there in no time. Down going to the. It should roll in pretty quick, I would say. Renee, okay, lots going on. You put the book out. Still doing stuff with AEW. Geez, you got the new Bengals podcast, and the session's still kind of over here. Maybe we'll see what's going on with that.
Yeah,
who knows?
The fire's still being stoked a little.
But what will you do next? What's the plan here?
I don't know, and that's sort of the nice thing that kind of comes back to what we were just saying, is sort of taking that moment to just kind of chill out for a minute. So I don't know what's next. And I'm sort of enjoying just living in that moment and not having that be a thing that freaks me out. I think sometimes not knowing what that next thing is can make us all get a little squirrely. And you know, I have a job. I've got several jobs, so I'm good on that front. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's next. I mean, the thing that I always come back to that like I would love to do is I would love to do like a morning show or like a Good Morning America, the Kelly Ripa gig. I mean, things that I kind of referenced earlier, like shows like that really speak to me. That's something that I would love to kind of keep pushing in a direction like that. Or we mentioned the Letterman thing too. Like I really do love those interview style shows. Can I do like the Willie Geist situation? Can I just interview people and go hang out with Ina Gartner in her yard and like help pick fresh herbs as she tells me about her like life story? I would love to do that. That would be great.
Well, I think you would absolutely rock that. Just be given the organicness of all the things that you've kind of done this all your own way, the whole way. Like everything that you've touched or done has had a Renee spin to it, which I think is great. There's just a nice flow.
Thank you.
You did the cookbook, which even just had that uniqueness. The way that was laid out is wonderful.
Sure.
I mean, are you still? Do you have another batch of recipes kicking around? You're going to do a second one?
You know what? I actually was like, I put out the book, and then I had my daughter about a month after the book came out. So that meant that I wasn't really cooking. I wasn't just like being in the kitchen. To me is also that creative juices flowing. You kind of put on a record, you have a glass of wine, you're in there cooking, you kind of take your time. My life doesn't really work like that anymore now. It's like dinner's got to get made. We're having this, put it on the table, get the kid fed, get her up into a bath, get her into bed. So being able to just like kind of like F off in the kitchen for a bit is not really on the schedule, but I've been like kind of getting back into it now. I mean, she's older now, so I do have a little bit more time to do that, but there was a little bit of a moment of like, oh, I just put out a cookbook and God, I think I'm not cooking at all right now. So now I've been like kind of dabbling back into some of those older recipes, while also I just picked up Molly Baz's cookbook. I picked up 2 of hers. She's great. She's so great. So I've been kind of going through some of her recipes, because that's what really got me into wanting to do my own cookbook anyways. Like I love cookbooks, so spending a little bit more time kind of messing around with other people's recipes, that makes me very, very happy. I was gonna do a steak poivre the other night, but I just cooked the steak anyways.
Is your mom like, why didn't you put any of mine in there?
Actually, I did put in some of my nanny's recipes, who's from Nova Scotia. Yeah, there's like a Scotch egg in there. There was a Hawaiian fried rice with like, I don't know if my nanny did it with spam or she just did it with ham. But I have a whole recipe card of my grandmother's that I did kind of use for a little bit of inspiration for my book. But no like true Maritimer foods.
Well, you were the busiest person in the world last time I spoke to you, and you've added more things. I mean, I'm looking at my board. There's 3 things going on. It's just crazy. Good for you, though. I think it's
Thanks.
amazing to be in and doing things that you love to do, and it
Yeah,
just
it's
makes it. It's
great.
not work at that point, right?
It's
It's just
true.
another day. And
It's
given how
true.
busy you've been and how crazy it's been, and that you do need the break, I do appreciate you coming on this show today to talk a little bit about your world now and what's been going on since the last time we
Yeah.
chatted. And it really means a lot. So I thank you for that.
Of
So
course. Thanks for having me on. Always good to see you. Always a good conversation. And this setup really is pretty kick ass.
it's a
So
lot of
hats off.
fun. I
It's
dig it.
cool.
It's
Yeah.
nice and it's tight.
Yeah. It's
Where
good.
can people? Do you want to direct people to all the things and where they can find you? Because
Yeah.
you're a good follow.
Yeah, my Instagram and Twitter are both at Renee Paquette. I started a TikTok, but I don't even know what my handle is on there. I don't know what I'm doing. I've got my YouTube page. It has some stuff up there.
Yeah.
And what else? What other things do I have going on, or other things to check out? Oh, I mean, obviously, if you want to watch Dynamite and Rampage, we've got Collision. Those are all on TNT, TBS. Check all that stuff out. My Bengals podcast. You can get that anywhere that you listen to podcasts. All of the links and stuff are all in my social media, though. So get there, enjoy it, soak it all up, all that good stuff.
Thanks, friend. That's a wonderful conversation, and I'm sure the next time we catch up, it will be there's just going to be like 7 more panels of things here,
We'll
but
see what
it'll be
it
done
is.
your way with your time frame and with your little twist of Renee in there, which is authentic and great. So thank you very much for being on Do Did Will, the Story of People podcast this week. Hope you guys learned something. Please follow Renee on everything. Thanks to my friends over at Crier Media for having this little show on that big old network. And Renee, thank you for helping me on this show to maybe have it become a bigger show. So
My
thanks,
guy.
friend.
Killed it.
All right. That's Do Did Build a Story People podcast for another week. Thanks, friends. See you next week.